My name is Erico Montes. I am a retired ballet dancer, a teacher, a choreographer and a ballet master. When I was about 3 years old, when my family asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, I used to say I wanted to be a ballet dancer, and nobody knew why, because there was no dancers in the family, no artists, no musicians, or nobody in the arts world. My sister started dance classes, and I went to see the performance, and at the end of the performance I said to my mum that I also wanted to go to dance classes. I started doing tap dance, but I knew I wanted to do ballet. So after a few months doing tap, I started doing the ballet classes and then stopped doing everything else just to focus on the ballet. I was 10 when I started going to a local school that was called Tânia Ferreira. That was the name of the teacher who founded the school. And I went to that school for about 2 years before I moved to a bigger school with more tradition in classical ballet that was called Aracide Almeida. And I was there for about 4 years, 4 or 5 years. In Brazil, where I was from, there was no vocational dance school. So I went to normal academic school in the morning, sort of 10 to, I think, 1 it was. And in the afternoon, I would go to ballet classes. When I started, it was only in the evenings, a few times a week. And then as I got older, it became every day. And I would spend the whole afternoon and evening in the ballet school. The school where I started dancing was a small school, and I was the only boy, as it often is the case. And I think the teachers there said that they thought I was talented and I should look for a better school where there might be more boys and I could, learn more advanced ballet. My very first experience on stage, it was when I was still doing tap dance, and I think it was me and another 2 girls, and we did a little dance, and we were dressed as sailors. And it's a long time ago, so I don't have very vivid memories, but I do remember that as soon as it happened, I wanted to do it again. I remember enjoying the feeling of the performance. I don't remember being nervous when I was young to perform. I just really thought it was a lot of fun, so I really looked forward to any opportunity to be on stage. My mum and my dad was very supportive. When I started, I was 10, 11, we weren't thinking of it becoming a profession. They were supportive, but because they didn't know anything about the dance world, I think sometimes they worried, just a little bit maybe about, other kids making fun of me being a boy who went to dance classes. But not too much. I think they were just happy to let me do what I wanted to do, and I enjoyed it. And as it became more serious, and I kind of became more clear that I wanted to be a professional dancer, they were concerned, not because they didn't want me to be a dancer, but they were just concerned because in Brazil, it's not financially, it's not a a very good choice to be a dancer. You can't really support yourself. So I think their worry was more about my future. Could I have a future being a dancer? And we really didn't know that you could go abroad and become a dancer in a company in another country or get a scholarship to train. So the worry was more about, would I have a future? But they were very supportive in terms of letting me do what I enjoyed and was what I felt it was my dream. In Brazil, there's quite a big competition that happens every year. In the capital city in Brasilia, it's just the Brasilia seminar, dance seminar, and lots of international teachers come, and we go for the whole month. So you take lots of different classes with this different teachers from different schools, and you perform, and there's a competition. You get a prize, but also there's lots of scholarships that are given. So I went when I was 17, and I got, I believe it was bronze medal, and I was given a scholarship to come to London to train at the London Studio Centre. So I came because I had to finish my academic school in Brazil. I was only able to come halfway through the school year here in England. So I came in January 2003. When I was growing up in Brazil, this was before YouTube and everything, so we knew a lot less about what was going on in other places. But my teacher had a lot of tapes from companies all over the world, and we would have little parties where we would all go to someone's house to watch ballet tapes, and we had seen many, all the Russian companies and American Ballet Theatre, and there was this one tape of the Sleeping Beauty with the Royal Ballet with Viviana Durante, and that was our, my group of friends, that was our favorite video to watch. When I first arrived in London, I couldn't speak any English, only very, very little, and it was the first time I was away from home, so it was a little bit of a culture shock in that sense. I used to come to the opera house. They used to sell day seats. I think it's changed now, but for every performance there were some tickets that were sold only on the day of the performance. So you had to get in line very early in the morning because it was only a few tickets. So I would come and buy the cheapest ones because it was all I could afford. And then that's how I first came to the Opera House, and I watched, I remember I saw, the first time I came to the Opera House, I watched the triple bill it was Senda Ballet, Winter Dreams, and Sinfonietta. And I saw Darcy Basel, and I saw Sylvie Guillaume, and Miyako Yoshida, and it was, it was my dream. And I had never been inside an opera house, and I was just, amazed at how beautiful it was. I don't think I'd ever seen a performance with a live orchestra. I had only performed to recorded music, and even the performances I'd watched had never been with live music. So that was really when I became aware of what being a dancer meant. What sort of life you could have being a professional dancer, which is something I had no idea when I was in Brazil. And during my time with London Studio Centre, I went to a competition in Italy, in Brieti, and one of the judges was the assistant director of the Royal Ballet School, and he asked me if I would be interested in coming to the Royal Ballet School to audition. When I first came to audition, after the class, I went to the director's office. It was Miss Gayleen Stock at the time, and she said, we can definitely offer you a place. We would love to have you at the school. But it was a little bit late in the year, and they had given out all the scholarships. So she said, she asked if I would be able to pay. And I said that, of course, that there was no chance my parents could afford. The fee was already, but so many years ago, it was so expensive. And I said, no, there's no way. if you can't give me a scholarship, I'll have to decline the offer. And then she said, well, we're going to see what we can do. And a few weeks later, I received a letter that they had found a way to give out another scholarship. And from the moment I saw that letter and I knew I was going to the school, I was very nervous because I had this idea that everybody was going to be so good and you know, it was going to be so serious and so difficult, the classes. So I worked very hard, and I came to see the school performance at the end of that school year, and I couldn't believe how good everybody was and that they were dancing on the Opera House stage. And I went home for the summer break, and I did 3 or 4 classes every day because I thought, my God, there's no way I'm ever going to keep up with everybody else. And I knew I was going to the last year, and I thought, you know, these people have been training so seriously for so many years. And so I was very, very nervous and very scared. And when we started, I was very surprised at how it just wasn't as scary as I as I thought it would be. Everybody was very good, and I did have to work very hard to keep up with the other people in my class. But it wasn't as scary, as serious as I had prepared myself for. And it was, no, I had a great time at the Royal Ballet School. Because I joined the last year is mainly about, you know, obviously ballet classes, and we had pas de deux classes, and we had assessments, we had, you know, class and pas de deux and solos. But it's more about really becoming a professional dancer. So we performed more than the other years. So we had more rehearsals than classes. In fact, I didn't have any contemporary, because they do contemporary first and second year, and then the last year it's not so much, because we have so much of the time is taken with rehearsals, preparing for the tour that class goes on. So I didn't have, you know, I never did character class. I never, in my whole training, I never did character. So when I joined the company, I was a little bit lost with that also. The biggest thing about being at the Royal Ballet School was the chance to be so close to the company. And it really gave me an opportunity to see, you know, the everyday life of a professional dancer at the Royal Ballet. And that was when I joined the Royal Ballet School, I don't think I was all that clear about how at the end of that year I was going to have to get a job, and that would be the end of training. I don't think I had that clear idea if that's how it works. And I had seen many performances at the Opera House by then, and it was a dream. But I didn't think I was going to join the Royal Ballet, and I don't think I understood that I was going to have to get a job. But so for me, being so close to the company was a real eye-opener, and that's when I realized I really wanted to join the Royal Ballet. And when you're in the last year, mainly in the last year, you get to perform with the company. You get to be an understudy in some productions, and also walking roles. The first time I performed with the company, it was Romeo and Juliet, and we had been to rehearsals, and we had learned the ballroom, and we had been to a fight rehearsal, which I really didn't understand what was going on. And they said, watch this person, but because I didn't know anyone, 5 minutes later I couldn't find that person in the room, because I had forgotten what he looked like. And at the end of the rehearsal, I thought, my God, if they asked me to do it, I don't know. I don't even know who I'm looking at. So it was very confusing. And I was, in a way, lucky I never had to do the fights or the ballroom as a student. And then there was this one day when they said, you have to be Thibaut's aide. And I had to go back to one of my classmates and say, what is Thibaut's aide? Who is it? I didn't know I didn't even know what they meant. So then this ballet master came to me and said, right, do you know what you need to do? And I said, no. And he said, right, so you come on with Thibaut and you just follow him around, and you have this sword, and if he drops his sword, then you have to quickly run close to him and gave me this, load of instructions which made no sense to me. I didn't know, and said, okay, all right, and that was it, and the show was that day, and I didn't know. I didn't think I knew who Thibaut was. I didn't know. So my friends had to say, it's the guy in red, and you go close to him. And my friends had to almost translate and explain to me what I had to do. And then we were waiting. I was right by, next to the person who was playing Thibaut, who was William Tuckett. And when he said, let's go, and he walked up the stairs, and I walked up the stairs behind him. And when I realized, when we got on stage and I realized we were up on the platform, I was a little bit scared. I'm a little bit scared of heights. And when I realized we had to walk down the steps to get to the stage, I thought, I think I'll have to go around and meet him downstairs, because I was so nervous. So I was nervous to walk down the stairs, and I walked down the stairs. And I think, I stayed close to him, and I kept following him around, and as I know now how it works, and the company members push you around and try to stop you and get in the way. And I didn't know if they were doing it on purpose, if it was different, or if that was just what they had to do. I was very confused. And I think I was too close to Thibaut, because I was so worried about not being close to him. And he actually tripped on my foot and rolled around the stage. And it was fine. He was absolutely fine. I apologized. He said, oh, don't worry, it happens. And when we were walking up the stairs back to the dressing room, I remember hearing one of the company members saying, oh my God, it was so funny when Thibaut tripped. And the other one said, yeah, it was the student. And I was so embarrassed, but it was fine. And then it turned out that I was meant to wear a hat, and I didn't know. So the ballet master came to the dressing room and said, you did very well, but you cannot go on stage in Romeo and Juliet without a hat on. So you have to find a hat. So then I had that for the next performance. I had to then find out which hat I had to wear and where this hat was and how to wear it. So it was a big experience that first time. But it was great fun, and Romeo and Juliet became one of my favorite ballets to be in. At some point during my time at the school, I understood how things worked, and that you had to get a job. And I think we had meetings, individual meetings with the director, to sort of discuss, where you would like to go, and she would advise you to say whether that was realistic or not, or if you should be looking at a slightly different company, and I think she would help you decide where to go to audition. And when I went to my meeting, I didn't know anywhere else. I just said to her, I wanted to go to the Royal Ballet, and she said, okay, but you need to have other options. You have to go to other auditions. And I said, but I want to go to the Royal Ballet. And she said, no, I know, but you still have to go to other auditions. So then I had to, buy, still at that time, internet was not what it is now. So I had to go to the shop and buy a magazine to see which other companies existed and where maybe I would like to go and what auditions were happening. So then I chose to audition at the Dutch National Ballet. I went to the audition, and I went with a friend of mine from my year. We went together, and it was huge. I mean, at least 300 dancers, I think we were split in 2 groups and we did class, and then they called some people back and we learned some rep, and I remember I slipped and fell doing learning the rep, and I thought it was over and it wasn't going to work. Then they called out some, I think, 12 names, people who had to wait to speak to the director. And I was one of the names they called, and I waited. But I was flying back that same night, straight from the theatre to the airport. So I had to go and ask if I could see him first, because I had my flight and I couldn't afford to miss the flight. So then they said, okay, you can go first, and I got offered a job. And he said to me, it was Ted Branson, and he said that we would like to offer you a job. It's still a bit early and we don't know how many places we'll have, but you're going to be one of the people who we're going to want to offer a place at the company. And he said, I believe he must have had some experience with Royal Ballet students before. So he asked me, he said, you can tell me honestly, if we offer you a job, will you come? I said, yes, unless the Royal Ballet gives me a job. And he said, oh, that's what I thought you would say. and obviously he understood. And so I came back, and that's how we, if you went to an audition and you got offered a job, you had to come back and tell the director. And what they would do they would then speak to the director of the company, who was Monica Mason at the time, and say, this person has been given a job. Should they take it, or are you thinking about offering them a place? And Monica said she did maybe want to offer me a job, but she didn't think she would have enough places, so I should take the job with the Dutch National Ballet. So I called back and I said that I would consider it. It was a few weeks, maybe a month, until they said for sure that they had a place for me, and they then sent the contract, and I had to sign and send it back, and I really didn't want to sign it because I really wanted to come to the Royal Ballet. And I emailed them back and say, oh, well, I'll do it at the end of this week. I'm sorry I couldn't do it yet. And I was really waiting, because I was waiting to see if there would be a place at the Royal Ballet. And finally, one day we were rehearsing, and Jay Jolly came to get me in the rehearsal and said, Miss Stock wants to see you in the office. And I was very worried. I didn't know if I had done something wrong. So when I went to Miss Stock's office, I opened the door and Monica Mason was sitting there. And she said she had, really looked and looked at the numbers and everything, and had found a way to offer me a job. And she said, have you signed your contract for Dutch National Ballet? And I had signed, but I hadn't mailed it yet. I hadn't gone to the post office. I said, oh, I'm going at the end of this week. And she said, don't send it, and I will call him and I will explain. So that's how it happened. She then spoke to Ted Branson, and I think they did. She suggested him somebody else, and another boy from my class then got that place at the Dutch National Ballet, and I got to stay at the Royal Ballet. At the end of my year at school, I got to dance with the company because the company was dancing Les Noces, and for some reason lots of the men were injured, and they called me and Stephen McRae, who was in my class at school, and they said, we need them to come to rehearsal to learn. And we had been to one rehearsal, and then the next rehearsal we had to go in, and we did the rehearsal, and in the end I did every show. So when then I joined, after the summer when I joined the company, I had already performed a dancing role, a very difficult ballet to remember and to count, and people had really noticed me because I was very quick at learning, and and some of the company members would even follow me as a student, and so I didn't feel too scared when I started as a member of the company, because I had already had that little bit of that experience, and I felt that people knew that they could trust me because I had been on stage in something difficult, and so I was just very excited. There was I don't remember being nervous or being, because we had spent quite a lot of time taking class and in rehearsal with the company, so it didn't feel scary or unfamiliar. I was just very excited to really be fully a member of the Royal Ballet and have all the performances night after night and all the rehearsals, and it was all very exciting. You don't realize every day all the time, but it's just you're surrounded by the best of the best in every way. When I joined, there was still Darcy Bassel, Jonathan Cope, Sylvie Guillem, Miyako Yoshida, Lena, Tamara, and all the big stars of today were already around but young, and I saw some of them become who they are today. Just felt so lucky to be where the best of ballet was happening, and in every way, even all the choreographers and all the different productions that we get to do, and we get to travel to amazing places, and sometimes some guest dancers will come, and we get to see how they work and the difference from the places they come from. So it was very very inspiring, and I got to dance a lot of things, different things, and as I became older, I also got to do roles that I didn't imagine I would get to do, and then that I didn't really think I would enjoy, but then really enjoyed, and became things that I really will remember forever. Having that opportunity to, and also doing some character work, the way it worked for me, I got to then be closer to the principal dancers, because I'd have that experience. If you're Wilfred, then you get to have that relationship with the dancer playing Albrecht, and if you're Friar Lawrence, then the Romeo and Juliet, all of those things. And it just, it really inspiring. And quite young in my career, I got interested in choreography. A little bit like when I started dancing, I can't really explain why. I don't know what, I just decided I wanted to try, and the more I did, the more I liked doing it, and the more I wanted to do. And one thing just always led to another, and opportunities kept coming up as a choreographer, and it became, in a way, sort of 50-50 in terms of what my satisfaction, my joy of being in the ballet world. Being a dancer and being a choreographer started to become kind of equal parts of my experience. The very first time I choreographed something was for the draft works at the Royal Ballet. It was 2006, maybe 6 or 7. And I decided that I wanted to take part, and I wanted to choreograph. And I chose a piece of music that I had watched many times. A video of American ballet theatres that did a ballet to that music, and I loved that music, and I loved that ballet. And I had always said that if I were to choreograph something, I would want to use that music. So I used that music, and I used 4 girls who were my friends. And that first time was really, I think it was very much about, I really loved that piece of music. And I just had this idea of how I wanted to move to that piece of music. It was very classical, as all of my choreography has been, very classically based. But it was very inspired by the music. And I think it kind of grew from that I discovered that the music could really inspire me to create new combinations of steps and just new ways of putting together, the classical vocabulary to match the music and to express the emotion of the music through the movement. And I think it's always stayed very much my sort of process, always this idea of translating the music into movement, always using, classical ballet steps and language. The first piece I made was for 4 girls, and they were dancing on their own, together and sometimes solos. And it was, I don't think it was the next piece I made, or maybe the one after, when I decided to try to do a little bit of partnering. I remember, and it was always, for a long time, and still is a little bit something I feel it's maybe not my strength as a choreographer. But I remember, being really inspired. We have some, the Macmillan ballets have incredible pas de deux and such organic ways of partnering. And even Christopher Wilden, or when I was in DGV, I remember watching how he had created those very different pas de deux that were, very different ways of partnering and interacting between the man and the woman. And I decided, it took me a while to be brave enough to try. And I find it very interesting, but it's more, for me, I think everybody is different. For me, it's more challenging than creating work that is just the one, people moving individually. Finding, translating your ideas and making them possible with 2 people, and also then adding another level. Really, you have to then have these 2 emotions. You have to imagine what this person's feeling and that person's feeling and how they come together, which is a lot more complex than when you're choreographing for one person dancing on their own. So partnering is something I find challenging, but also very interesting to really dive into and try and figure things out. This was in 2012. I had made quite a few different pieces of choreography for smaller groups, bigger groups, pas de deux, or here at the Royal Ballet, either for the draft works or for small gala performances, but always Royal Ballet dances. And it was Bennett Gartside who put me in touch with the director of the London Children's Ballet, which is a wonderful charity-based organisation. And every year for, I think, over 25 years now, they put on a full evening ballet, full-length ballet, story ballet, performed by children. And the children audition and learn the choreography, and it's always created on the cast, that cast that will be performing it that year. So I was introduced to Lucille Bryans, who's the founder director of the London Children's Ballet, and she offered me the opportunity to create the Secret Garden. It was the first time I choreographed a full ballet, and it was a 2-act ballet, and the first time I was working with children. I had never worked with children in any way, and we met, and she explained a little bit how it worked, and asked if I'd be interested, and I said yes, because as it has been in my experience, I almost always say yes to things just because I do. And so I said yes, but I explained to her, I said, I have never worked with children, and I just don't know, do you think? And she said, oh, I have a feeling that you're going to be good. And I said, oh, you've been doing this a long time, so if you think so, I will trust your judgment. And it turned out to be one of the most amazing experiences. I really, from the very first rehearsal, it just all clicked, and it all worked, and I loved the children, and the children really liked me, and we got on well. I really got good results with the children, which was, a surprise to everybody, because I had no previous experience. And it was a revelation, because I really enjoyed the process of creating a story ballet, and having to think of the character development and the storyline, and because it's performed by children, they are between 9 and 14. I really had to think about everything so thoroughly in order to be able to explain to them so clearly, because you can't rely on children to understand how to portray a character. You really have to explain and give them the tools. And it wasn't, for me, it was an amazing experience. And I still remember to this day that at the end of the first performance, I came on stage and the children were all screaming, and I was crying. And I said to them, I said that was the happiest day of my life. And sometimes I look back and I think, is it still the happiest day of my life? And I think it still is, because it really was. It was a revelation to me, and it really changed my life. From that point forwards, that gave me the confidence. I remember saying to Lucille how, until then, although I had choreographed a lot, I would never tell anybody I'm a choreographer. And that experience really gave me the confidence to think of myself as a choreographer, because I felt I had achieved something quite special to have created that ballet and with the children. And it opened a new door for me to know that I was able to work with young dancers. And although you're choreographing, there's a lot of teaching that needs to happen, because they don't know the steps. When you're working with professionals, they know the steps. You create the combination, but you could just sit down and say, tombe, pas de break, glissade. They know, and the kids don't know it. So on top of having to create the choreography, you have to teach them how to do each of the steps. So we really added a lot of things to my, this box of things that I now know that I can do. So it really changed. I really see my life. It was one thing before that, and it became a different thing, and it gave me so much hope for my future, knowing that there were so many other things that I could do once when I had to stop dancing and I couldn't dance. I knew that there were so many things that I could do and that I really enjoyed doing. After I had my first experience with the London Children's Ballet, I think I became, I got noticed a little bit more as a choreographer, and like I said, more opportunities started to come up, and soon after I had done The Secret Garden, I was approached by Karen Pilkington, the founder director of the New English Ballet Theatre, and she invited me to choreograph for the company. And I made my first piece for them, I think it was 13. I think that was the first time I made a pas de deux. I got performed many times, and after that I extended it and made it a little bit longer. And then after that I made 2 other things for them, which again, it just followed so well the work I had done with London Children's Ballet, because London Children's Ballet, it's children and they're students, and the New English Ballet Theatre is sort of the next, the next stage. It's students who have finished their training but are not professionals yet. So for me, it just flowed so well that I had that experience with this age gap, and then the next one. And again, very interesting, because obviously they're more mature and they're fully trained, so you're not having to teach the steps, but they're not as experienced as professional dancers. So there's still a lot of things that you need to teach and explain and sort of prepare them when it comes to performance, how to approach a performance. So for me, it was a very logical progression to get into that, to working with the dancers of the New English Ballet Theatre. The more work I started to do as a choreographer, and one thing leading to another, and things here, and also I did some children's work in Greece and in Malta. So there was a bit of traveling, and also, sometimes in the summer break I would not have a holiday, and I would fill all my dancer holidays with choreographer work. It adds up, because as a dancer with the Royal Ballet, you're on in every performance, and you're always rehearsing the next one and performing one, and preparing and making sure you're staying in shape and able to do all your work, and managing any injuries if you have any. I was very lucky, I had very few. But it became just a lot of work, and I was going from one thing to the next, not having a lot of breaks in between, which, like I said, I always said yes to any opportunities that came up, because I just love the work. But it's a lot, and it starts to become difficult, because you feel you're maybe not doing things as well as you could, because your brain is sort of split all the time. You're doing this, but you're thinking of that, or you're thinking of what you need to do after, and it adds up, and it, in a way, it kept me fulfilled, because I had all of these things that I was doing, and there was always something, and if something was a bit slow, then if I didn't have a lot of dancing to do, I had more choreography, or the other way around, and it kept me busy and interested and satisfied with the work. But as as natural as it is, you can't dance forever. It sort of starts to, you start to think of what you can give as a dancer, and as a choreographer, as a teacher, and the scale starts to tip. Once you've done. I had danced for many years, and I had done so many different roles, and some of them I had done many times, and I was very happy doing all of my work, and I would gladly have gone on doing all of those things at the same time. But I did start to question in terms of what I could give, whether there was more I could give by staying on stage, staying, a full-time professional dancer with the Royal Ballet, or if there were more things that I could be sort of contributing to the dance community and all the new generations coming up, if I were to move into becoming just a choreographer and a teacher. And it's a slow process making that decision, but also kind of natural. It sort of just happens. So it all happened strangely at the right time, without really me planning it, or without it going according to the plans I had made. I had decided to stop performing with the Royal Ballet at the end of the 1920 season. I had decided, and with Kevin O'Hare, director of the Royal Ballet, we had looked at the rep and everything. And it was all decided, and it was going to happen a certain way. And then it all changed because, of course, so my last ballet would have been the Swan Lake, which I believe we opened in early March 2019, and it would have gone on until May. I think my last show would have been 14th or 15th of May 2020. But of course, by the 12th or 13th of March, everything had to stop. And at first, we didn't know for how long. So in the beginning, I thought maybe, we'll come back and I'll do my however many shows are left. And then it didn't happen, and it didn't happen, and it didn't happen. And in a way, it was like a question answered, because there was no option really. It was decided. The shows had stopped. The company was not working. I had already made the plans to stop, and I didn't. I had gone through that process of preparing myself emotionally for the end, and I didn't think I wanted to kind of go back and have to do all of that again. And then, for a long time there were no performances, and it was very difficult staying in shape in the kitchen. And in a way, for me, it just seemed so logical that was the end, and that I probably wouldn't dance again, which was many things, but one of the things it was a relief, because I knew I didn't have to dance in the kitchen in order to stay in shape. And I had that one worry that all dancers all over the world had. I didn't have, because I knew I was done, and I didn't need to worry about staying in shape and being able to do a double tour again. And I didn't have to. So it was, in a way, it was kind of nice to not have to worry about that. When it all started, we didn't know what was happening, and we didn't know how long it was going to take. And all of these online classes started happening, and again, like somebody asked me, would I teach their students online? And I said yes, because I knew that I had the time. And I really felt for the people that did need to keep training, especially students who, it's an important time when you're a teenager. It's make or break, and you can't stop. So I felt it was sort of my duty to help those people who needed to keep training. So I started teaching online, which was a whole new experience for everybody. And, it was kind of fun at times and then a little challenging. So I started teaching and then became very busy teaching online. And I gave some classes to students, and I gave classes to professionals. I gave some Zoom classes to the Royal Ballet, and I gave some private Zoom classes also to Marinella Nunes, who was locked down in Argentina. And she had quite a good space actually, in comparison to all things. So we I would give her class, and how amazing it was that I wasn't a teacher, and I became one. Just like that, I became a teacher, and I was teaching all sorts of people, students and professionals, and you know, star ballerinas, and there were Instagram lives and classes on Instagram that people would then watch and then think, they'd watch and think I was a teacher, and then that I was this important teacher, which I wasn't, because I had never been. But it in a way, again, it brought to my attention that there was this other thing that I could also do, which I was a dancer, and then I was a choreographer. And even though there was a lot of teaching, during my experience as a choreographer, there was some teaching involved, I didn't consider myself to be a teacher. For me, I was a dancer and I was going to be a choreographer. And then all of a sudden I had this other thing that I could also call myself, and it grew. It just kept on growing from that. The Royal Ballet organized very quickly Zoom classes and a whole schedule of, that we had some strength training and Pilates that we were fully supported. But just the way it happened, the summer holidays, which, we were still at home, they fell in the middle of that space where we were still not in the studio. We were not able to go to the studios. And again, because I was so relieved in myself knowing that I didn't have to dance, I was really thinking of my colleagues and my friends who would, were worried about coming back to their careers and couldn't stop for a month. So I offered the dancers of the Royal Ballet, I said, I have been doing a lot of online teaching, so I know how it all works. You start the meeting, you play the music. I know how it works, and I'm happy to give classes if anybody's interested. And a lot of people were interested. So for 4 weeks, I gave them 3 times a week. I gave them classes from my little living room. And, people were doing it in their gyms. Some people were in other countries, some people were here in England. And I honestly was not thinking of anything other than I wanted to help. I wanted to help those people who, I wanted them to basically have class to do in whatever way possible. So I did that, and then that summer holiday finished. And by then we were able to come back to the studios. Even I was able to come back and do classes in the studio, which I did for another, I think, 5 or 6 weeks. So really my end of my dancing career was just class. It was just classes. And then we had another, well, I was done. It was the end of my career as a dancer of the Royal Ballet. There was a week break, and the company started again. But of course, it was still difficult traveling. People couldn't travel around the world, and the Royal Ballet has a lot of guest teachers. We have some best teachers in the world that come very often to give us classes. But of course, that wasn't possible because nobody could travel. So the dancers asked Kevin, the director, said, Erico gave us those classes and it was pretty good. So it, we would be happy if you were to invite him. And that's how it happened. 2 weeks after I had officially retired as a dancer, I was back in the studio at the Royal Opera House as a guest teacher. It was very interesting when Kevin called me and said, would you like to come and teach class? And again, of course, I said yes. And then when we hang up the phone, I was thinking, oh my God, wait a minute. I said, yes, I'm going to have to teach class. And of course I had given those classes on Zoom, but that's, very, very different. I was alone and people were happy to just turn the cameras off, or they could do whatever they wanted. It was a completely different experience, nothing compared to being in the room with the dancers. So I was a little bit worried, and I planned the class that I was going to give. I had never given class with a pianist. I had only given classes with recorded music, which you prepare, you listen to the music and you prepare the step that fits the music, and there's no room for mistakes because you know what's going to happen. So I was a little bit nervous, a little bit worried, and I came in and I was nervous coming in, but then when I walked in, it was very strange because it was so familiar. I was where I had been my whole life, in the same place, and instantly I was calm, and I thought, well, I'm here to do this. There's no going back. I can't walk out now. They're all here. They're all waiting. So I knew I had to do it. Whatever happened, I had to get through the class. I had to give the class. I was there. They were waiting. It had to happen. So I just did it, and it was very strange, because I kept thinking, as strange as it was for me, I kept thinking of how strange it must have been for the dancers. I remember thinking some of the principal dancers must have been very confused, thinking this person was always at the back of the room and now he's in front of the room and he's now telling us what to do. And I kept thinking, trying to figure out what they were thinking about me being in front of the room, more than how, I was thinking of just everyone's experience, how strange that was. And even the pianist, having seen me in the middle of a group of 20 people and then leading the class, and how strange it all must have been to all of us. But at the same time, everybody was so supportive and so respectful. I don't think I can express how grateful I feel to the way the dancers welcomed me as a teacher, and so quickly everybody just really took me so seriously in this completely new position. And then I did that one class, and I thought maybe that was it. Maybe that was just that one time, and how nice, and it's never going to happen again. And then they called me again and again, and it became just, it sort of became, as the travel rules came and went, and because I was here, I sort of became that person who could come at any point if everything else went wrong, and I just so incredible to have, some of my best friends, but also some people who I've always admired, Federico Bonelli and Marianella and Laura Moreira and Akane and all of these principals who I looked up to for so many years. And then Alessandra Ferri, who I remember watching on that videotape that my teacher had, and then she was in my class, and she, and and watching Natalia Zipova doing my combination and how, you know, how amazing it, and it just, I'm so grateful to have had this experience. And really, honestly, when I decided to stop dancing, I thought I was going to try and make it as a choreographer. And you know, I knew I was going to have to do some other things because choreography is hard to sort of live as a choreographer. So I knew I was going to have to do a bit of teaching, and I had considered maybe becoming a ballet master, which I think might still, probably will still happen. But I had never considered teaching professional dancers. And honestly, after that one class, it sort of became my number one option of what I want to do next. It went so quickly from something I had never considered to being the one thing I really want to do now. You know, like everything else in my life, it just, for no clear reason, it just, from one inspired idea, just becomes this thing that I really want to do and hope to be able to do for a long time now. So I was, you know, very lucky, because to start a new career by teaching the Royal Ballet is, you know, it can't get any better than that. So, you know, that also helped open some new doors now as a teacher. And the way things are now, people know what everyone's doing, and once it kind of became known that I was teaching at the Royal Ballet, some other things came up, and I was invited to teach in a company in Turkey, which was my first experience as an international guest teacher, which was great fun, and I'm very grateful to have had that chance. And also, the New English Ballet Theatre invited me to teach, and then it turned out that they needed a ballet master, which I thought would be a great opportunity for me to sort of, you know, together with the teaching, have this opportunity to try out this new position as a ballet master. And I was able to do that job with them for a period of time, and working with choreographers and dancers, and create, you know, in the process of creating new ballets and getting them ready for performance and filming, which was all very interesting, and again, something I really enjoyed and hope to do more. Very grateful to Karen Pilkington to have given me this chance and have trusted me with, again, a job that I had never done. So I kept teaching a little bit here and there with the Royal Ballet, and very lucky that Kevin did not forget a conversation we had during the first lockdown, and invited me back to have the farewell performances that I didn't get to have. So I will be doing 2 performances of the role of Friar Lawrence, which is a role I had done before. Kevin cast me in it for the first time, I don't know, I think seven years ago, maybe. And I had not many, but I did a few shows with different casts, and it, again, surprisingly became a really important role for me, something that I really enjoyed doing, and feel, you know, quite proud to have been given this opportunity, and you know, and very lucky to now get this chance to do it 2 more times with this dream cast. That's Marinella Nunes as Juliet and Federico Bonelli as Romeo. And on top of that, we also got to rehearse with Alessandra Ferri, which was very special to have had my, you know, my last rehearsal as a dancer. It was, you know, me and Alessandra Ferri and Marinella Nunes in the room. So, you know, really special memories that I can hold on to forever.